This is part 3 of the video to put our website online that inserts data about soccer players. So we're just going to continue from where we are. If you're not sure, go back and watch the other 2 videos. So at this stage, this is the basic website that we've got laid out. It has where it's going to send to, insert data.php in the form of a post. It has a first name, it has a last name, and the nationality. And when the person chooses which one of these, we're going to submit that information. We're going to send it to an insert data.php file. Now, I've shared this file on the Google Classroom, so you should be able to get so all of you should have this file, but it's no good just getting it. You need to actually understand the file and work out the structure, and so that you understand how it works, not just I understand how it works because I've given you the file. You need to actually understand how it works. So let's go through it very quickly. Similar to the HTML file, we've started with an open, so we have to close with a close here. So we've started this one, we started with a question mark PHP, and it closes with a question mark at the end. So that sort of says that's the section that's going to be PHP. Now, at the top here of this insert data file, we are going to set up some variables, and those variables are going to talk to our database. Now, you know we've started MAMP and we created a database. We'll just sneak back here and have a quick look. We go back, here's our database, and you can see the database that we started was called player data right here, player data, and inside that player data we've got our table set up and all that sort of stuff. So it's important that here you have the same name, that you have player data set up here as well, and it has to be typed exactly the same way. Capital P, capital D, has to be set up player data. Now these other ones, the first one is the server name. Now because we're using MAMP, it has a default server name which is localhost, and it comes with a default username root and a default password root. So these 3 are defaults. You don't need to change them. You can if you want to, and in fact when you maybe if you purchase a website or a domain or something, then they'll give you their own server names and their own username and password. But because we're using MAMP and the way we're doing it, leave these 3 exactly as they are, default, localhost, root, root. The only one you need to check and change is this one, which is called player data. Okay, so this is your database name that you created that we've just done in the previous video. Now, in the previous video we didn't talk about comments, but to put a comment in PHP you can put 2 backslashes and then notice the different comments. So this is a way that we can write comments. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly jump back to our HTML page. I'm just clicking over here on the left hand side. If we wanted to put a comment in, say we want to put a comment in here in HTML, the best way to comment is like this. Dash, this is a comment, and you can see the whole page has gone grey, right? So you have to close that off as well to make sure that the comment stays just in that section. Now, you're not going to write this is a comment in your comments normally. What you're going to write is something like this is where the body of the file begins. Something like that. You're going to write information so that when you go back to it in a week from now, in 2 weeks from now, or just to study before your exams, you know what this is, right? So that's one way to put a comment in HTML. In PHP, this is the way we put the comment in, the double backslash. And in fact, if you want to write more than one line of comments, you would do a slash with a star. And then you can, oops, not that, a slash with a star, and then you can write more, and you can see here, same thing, everything below has grayed out until I close that, okay? Until I close that, everything would have grayed out, and you can write 2 or 3 lines, or 10 lines, or 100 lines, or whatever in between that, but for the purpose of this, just 2 slashes is good. Okay, this next section here is really important. This is where we're collecting the information from the HTML file. So remember, in our HTML file, we did a post. We posted the information. First was whatever the user put in for the first name. Last was whatever the user put in for the last name. And nat was whatever that they selected in here, any of these values that they selected in this pull down menu, right? So when we go to insert data, we want to collect that information. So we're getting it from the post, and it's called first, and we're getting this one from the post, and it's called second. Now, in our actual HTML file, we called it last, so we need to make sure that we change that. It's not the second name, it is the last name. Okay, so that says last, and from nationality we had nationality. Now we're assigning these values to local variables here. So $ first, $ last, $nat. So they're like local variables in this area here that now takes that information from our HTML file. Then we're going to go and test our connection to the server. Okay, so we're testing the connection that goes to our SQL database to make sure that using up here our local host, our root, and our player data, we're testing that when we actually try to connect to the network, to the MySQL database, we're testing that they work. So we're inputting server name, username, password, and our database name, which are taken directly from up here. Okay, so that's the first thing. We test that connection. If the connection doesn't work, it's going to give us a message saying connection failed, right? If it does work, then we're going to go through and we're going to do an insert, which means we're going to put the information from here. We're going to put this information into our database that we created earlier. So it says insert into players. Now players, this is the name of the table. So player data is the name of the database. Players is the name of the table we created. And we're going to go into the column first name, last name, nationality. And if you remember when I set up the database, I actually had a tab underscore in there, and I hummed and hawed about whether I put an underscore in. I did in the end put an underscore in, so I need to make sure that they're exactly the same. First underscore name, last underscore name, and nationality. So this is the columns that the information is going to go into, is those three columns. And the values that are going to go in are first, last, and nat, which we take from here. First, last, and nat. That's the information that's going into here. First, last, and nat. And it's going into the columns for first name, last name, and nationality into our database. So that's what we want to happen. So if that connection works, this is the next section down here. If the connection works, so if the connection, that's this connection up here, is successful and we've entered our SQL, we've done that query goes in and it all works, everything's perfect, then it's going to go and look for a page called bpage.html. Otherwise, else, it's going to come up and say error, it didn't work. So we're going to be told both times if it doesn't work. If the connection doesn't work, it tells us here. If the entry of data doesn't work, it tells us down here with an error. If it does work, it's going to look for this bpage.html, which is another page that we have to create. Okay, we're going to do that in just a second. So essentially this file, this insert data.php, this file links our HTML file to our database that we created in the very first video. This is a key file. They have to be kept in the same folder. So if we now go to our htdocs, let me just find where I've put it here, my htdocs. I've got my player HTML file and I've got my insert data file. So I've got them together in here. Now the insert data file says if everything works, it's looking for a bpage.html. So we need to make a bpage.html. So let's go File, New, File, Save As. We make sure we save it into the htdocs section, so it's not there at the moment. Let's go into MAMP, into htdocs, where the other two files are. We're going to call it bpage.html, and we're just going to go save. Now in this bpage.html, this is good practice for you to practice creating a website. Here's our new website. We're going to give it a head. Oops. Head. If I could spell it would be great. Close brackets. The title of this page, we're going to call this, we need to put in title. Okay, and in the title we're going to say congratulations. Alright, now that's just the title, so that's just going to be on the tab at the top. We actually want to have a heading, so let's put in here as well. Brackets, let's do an H2 heading this time. Congratulations. Right, so that's going to be our heading, and then we want to have some body text and that body text can say to us, well, let's set up the body. Let's just put in here, you have successfully entered data into the database. Okay, so let's save that file, save. Remember, we can always go straight to MAMP and just test just that page to see if that page is going to work. So we're going to go to the B page. It should say congratulations, you have successfully entered data into the database, and it should say congratulations up here as well. Okay, so at this stage all of that looks good, it all looks like it's going to work. So now one of the things that we want to do is we want to test that it actually works. So we're going to go to my website. We're going to click on the players HTML. We're going to enter some information. We're going to call this person John Hammer. John Hammer, that'll do. And we're going to say John is a Brazilian, and we hit submit. And it says congratulations, you have successfully entered data into the database. So now if I go back to MAMP and I click on PHP My Admin to look at our database, we can see that the player data is here. Here's our database. Here's our players folder. We look in there, player ID, all that sort of stuff. If we click this browse button up here, then the browse button will show us there, John Hammer, Brazilian, that has been entered into our database. So from here we can start to do queries and we can start to do other things. Now obviously someone's going to use this website over and over again, okay? So the website that we created, the players.html, you don't want to do it just for one player and then submit it. So we're going to go to our congratulations page. We're going to edit that page. We're going to put in a button that sends us back to enter more data in. We're also going to go to our players data page, that's this one, and we're going to make it much more comprehensive. We're going to have a whole pile more questions and a whole lot more of drop-down menus and other choices that you can make. We're also going to have on our congratulations page, we're going to have a table that comes up and actually shows the current data in the database. Okay, but that's all for the next video. At this stage, that's the end of this video. Wait for the next one.